welcome to our Bible study on the Ten Commandments, in which each lesson will look at a different commandment, a word that's going to guide our discussion, and a few points to consider as we live our lives. Today we examine the first commandment, you shall have no other gods. And the guide word that's going to help our discussion is this, elevation. We live in a very what's in it for me type of culture that's kind of inherently who we are because of sin. We seek after what is going to help elevate what we want or elevate our status amongst other people. When God took his people out of Egypt and out of slavery, they had been in slavery for over 400 years. And when they were in Egypt, they were subjected to a number of gods that the Egyptians worshipped. The Egyptians were known for all of the different gods that they worshipped. When the Israelites were going to be going into the Promised Land, they were going to be going into a land that also worshipped many, many gods. And the people that lived in that place were known for, if they needed something, they just invented a god that was going to, or what they felt was going to help them get what they needed. And so you're going to see that a lot of the people in the Near East at that time had a lot of family gods or had a lot of gods kind of in their own houses. And a lot of them had their own personal type gods because they believed that if they prayed to these gods, whether they needed rain for their harvest or whether they needed something else, that this God was going to help provide for them. And they would give their allegiance or they would pledge their devotion or their worship to these particular gods if they got what they wanted. And so they would invent all of these different gods, hoping that one of them might work and that it would continue to bear fruit for them and give them what they were looking for. And so God understood that when he took his people out of Egypt and out of slavery and seeing all of these gods that they had seen for 400 years in Egypt and this land that they were going to be going into, there was always going to be the threat of elevating some of these things because it was very, very enticing. They were going to elevate these false gods above the one God, the true God that we worship. And so he put down this commandment and he put it first, which is going to say, you cannot look at the false gods. You cannot look at all of these other gods that all of these other nations and all of these other peoples worship, because it is going to give you a false sense of security. All things come from me, and I want you to look towards me first in order to provide for you, not the things of this world. And so he was going to say, whenever you see these other gods, you cannot give them a second look, or else they could corrupt you and turn you away from me. And so a couple of points, we think about all of the different things that we elevate in our lives. Point number one, everything has God potential. Everything and every person. We have the opportunity with whatever we have in our lives, the people that we come in contact with, the people that we see on the internet or on TV, we can sensationalize these things and we can elevate them to God-like status. We can pursue somebody that we think kind of acts like a god, or to us they seem like a god. We have things in our homes or in our lives that we can elevate to God-like status. Some people worship money. Some people pursue after fame, power, and authority. All of these things are in danger of toppling the God that we want to worship if we pursue them too much and we give them too much leverage and we give them too much space in our daily routine, but especially in our hearts. Point number two, we must choose to reject other gods. When it comes to these God-like or this God potential that we have in our lives, we've got to intentionally choose to reject these gods. We've got to intentionally reject the things that are going on and the ways in which these things can take over our hearts. We've got to lay down the law for ourselves and say, no more. I will not pursue these gods. I will keep the one true God, the God in our lives, the God that we see in Jesus Christ and his forgiveness and his grace. That is going to be the one and only God that we worship in our lives. We have got to choose. We've got to choose every day to reject these other gods and the many, many gods that we find in this world. And point number three, We must surround the gods, not let ourselves be surrounded. We understand, even as we look at the Old Testament and the Israelites as they came out of Egypt, that they were surrounded by gods. They were surrounded by people that had gods, lots of gods. And in our world today, we've got a lot of false religions and we've got a lot of false gods that are around us. We must intentionally, we must be shrewd in surrounding the gods, we must say that we're going to surround these gods. We're not going to let them surround us. We are going to surround them with the power of Christ. We're going to surround them with the authority that God has given to us to reject these gods. We're going to have to surround them with the idea that they will not hold power and they will not hold lordship over us or our lives. We have to be very intentional about that. We must go on the offensive because, like I said, we live in a very what's in it for me culture, and it's very easy for that to turn on us. So I hope this has helped you understand and given you some things to think about in the First Commandment.